Hello and welcome to Strange Stories. It's great to have you here. We are all about sharing stories of near-death experiences from around the world in the hopes of bringing some light and inspiration to your day. Our daily videos offer a glimpse into what lies beyond this life, and we believe that they can help us all appreciate the gift of life a little bit more. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to stay up to date on all of our latest videos. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue to grow. And to our returning viewers, welcome back. We're thrilled to have you with us again. So go ahead, grab a cozy blanket, get comfy, and join us for today's incredible near-death experience story. Hello everyone, my name is Jacob King. This is my NDE. I was born and raised in Melbourne, Australia. Growing up, I was raised in a very tumultuous home. There was a lot of violence, a lot of trauma from both parents, and life was difficult. I grew up with a lot of health problems, depression, and other issues. My escape was always through sports, as well as a deep interest in spiritual matters and psychology. I discovered myself as I grew older. Mentally, I'm becoming increasingly ill. PTSD symptoms, things that were difficult to treat, desperate depression, suicidal thoughts, suicide attempts, drug addiction, and other such things. Things began to boil over in Melbourne around 2020 during the lockdowns and became quite unbearable. My drug and alcohol use had skyrocketed, and I was a complete mess. Come October 2021, I was at home, spending my paycheck on a cocktail of chemicals to numb the pain as I usually did, and before I knew it, I passed out, and I was instantly in a very dark place. I guess it's what's known as the void. I had no idea where I was. I had no idea what was going on. All I knew was that I began to feel this very beautiful, sweet, and powerful energy flowing through and around me, and it was a very loving presence. It was so loving that I felt every bone in my body, every cell just relax, and it was almost as if every cell in my body stopped working because it didn't need to work anymore. It was as if, oh, our job is done now, and my mind was still working. I was perplexed as to what was going on. I just knew that I was being deeply embraced by a huge presence. A huge figure was holding me and loving me, and it wasn't anything like the type of love I'd ever felt. It felt like when you hug someone you haven't seen in a long time, and it feels just relaxed, like you can melt in their arms. It felt like that, but much more powerful, and I was trying to figure it out because I started to realize that I was familiar with this energy I'd experienced. I remember who this is. And then I remembered that this was someone I had spent time with before I was born. It was God. And when I realized I was being held and embraced by God, I felt like, yes, I was being held and embraced by God. Yes, I remember thinking, yes, I'm finally back. I'm finally back with you. I felt so complete in His love that I realized everything I tried to do throughout my life had been futile. I tried to get every goal, every experience I chased. It was as if I was trying to get this, and now I'm back here, and there's nothing left to chase anymore. There's nothing left to look for. I'm good now. I'm fine. I'm finished here. I'm satisfied. And God then took me out of that void and into another dimension, where there were so many lights everywhere. It was almost like being in space with the stars, but the stars were different because the lights inside them were dynamic and constantly changing. And there were billions of them everywhere. And they seemed conscious and alive, and the colors that were emanating from these stars were so beautiful. This tower was made of the same kind of light. It was dynamic. The lights were changing color constantly, and we started to fly up the side of it going towards the top, and the speed we were traveling at was increasing and increasing as we went towards the top, and it was so fast and so intense, and the love and everything that I was receiving was just so much overload that as we started to reach the top, I told myself that I couldn't handle this. It's excessive. It felt like I'm going to die from all this love and all of this beauty. I can't take it anymore, and He pushed me to the limit of what I could take. Another smidgen of this love and energy, and I would have disintegrated. But He knew exactly where my limit was, and He took me right there, and before I knew it, I was at the top of this tower, and I was there with God. Just like an invisible ball of energy that I could feel. I can't seem to find Him. Either because I don't remember what He looked like or because He was invisible at the time. I'm not sure, but I definitely knew who that was, and we were there on the top of this tower, and we were looking out in front of us, and there were trillions of these lights all spread out, and it all looked so beautiful, and I just stared at it all, and I just took it all in, and then God said, "Now it's time to progress through this." And I knew what he meant by that was the same thing that happened as I was going up the tower of light. Now I was going to fly through all God. I nearly died coming up this tower, and I mean it was inconceivably more. I nearly fell apart, and now you want me to fly through it? I mean, if I fly through that, I'm done. I'm never coming back. And God said yes. And I thought to myself, okay, God says I'm going to die if I go through that, and he wants me to go through that. Okay, I said, I trust you. It may appear strange to humans, but being next to God, you can't doubt God. He's powerful. He was so wise. He was so loving, and he was so calm about it. And so I just thought, all right, he knows better than I do. I'll die if he says it will. And he says it is, as if there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, let's do it. And he picked me up almost like a paper airplane and threw me, and I began to fly through all of this space and all of this light. It was all coming past me, and the speed was increasing, and I got to that point again where I thought I'd die if I didn't stop. And I got past that point. And what happened when I got past that point? As I began to feel as if my skin was being pulled away from my body, my bones were falling away, and all the layers of identification with the human body that had remained with me here began to peel away. All those layers were peeling away, and it felt like taking off a very tight shoe. I also felt like all the trauma I had carried since childhood was peeling away with those layers. And one layer after another kept peeling off until I got to the final layer, the final substance of my life, the substance within me. And as I was still flying through, I thought, when I lose this final layer, this final substance, whatever it is, the final part of me, if I lose that, there's nothing left. There was this one layer that just wouldn't go away. And I was perplexed, wondering what was left of me that hadn't yet dissolved. What is it that is still left? And then God stopped me from flying and just picked me up like a grain of sand and showed me what he was looking at from his perspective, which was a small white light. He was staring at a small white light. This small white light was the light of my soul. He told me, he said, everything you've been through, everything you've gone through, everything you'll go through will fade away. This is all that is left. This is timeless. This is exactly what you are. Keep this in mind at all times. Remember this? And then he rolled me like a marble out of his hand, and I joined the other lights, and it was like a drop of water joining the ocean and becoming one with it, without a sense of its own identity. My ego had been completely erased, and I simply joined the sea of light and became one with them. And when I became one with them, I felt as if I were one with God, and it was the most beautiful and perfect experience. The human mind cannot comprehend this. It is beyond comprehension. It felt like a state of ecstasy, and there was no sense of time while I was there. I had just arrived. I was one, and I was back home after this because God picked me up again. And he separated me from the ocean, and an image appeared next to me in which I saw this human body right there. I passed out back on earth, and he said, "It's time to go back." And I said, "Oh, I don't want to go back." "Can you please let me remember this?" I asked. He said, "Sure," and I decided to wait before returning. "Could I ask you a few questions?" He said yes, and I asked how I could go back to being that guy. That guy. I don't want to go back to being him. Being depressed, drug addicted, and suicidal, and all of that is very different from who I feel I am now in this place, and it's too much of a contrast. And he just said, "It's okay." He didn't just say it's okay. He said it's okay. He didn't pass judgment on me. He didn't label me a failure. Nothing like that existed. He just said, "It's fine." And I asked about the people there. They're not going to believe me when I tell them about this location. I mean, how can all of this love and existence exist and I was unaware of it? You share this love with the people in my life. And as I rattled off a few names, he said to me, "Well, that's why you're there." I apologized, but how can I give them all of this love that I'm feeling right now? I have no way of giving them that love. And he said, "Simply ask me to assist you and ask me to be an outlet for this love." And I was intrigued by his wording there because he clearly said outlet, meaning I didn't have to try to produce this love. I just had to let my ego step aside so that love could flow through me. And I said, okay, I'll do it. But it seems so easy from up here while it's so difficult on earth. It doesn't make sense on earth. And he said, I'm you. And I was like, oh, I had trouble accepting that God was so big and so powerful and so loving. How can you say you're me? I am you. And I couldn't accept it. And then he took a moment, and out of the center of my forehead came this giant eye. Giant golden eye appeared from my forehead, looking back at me. And he said, I am viewing your life through you as we are one. And then he sent me back. It was difficult to return after that experience, not only because the vibration of the earth is so different from the vibration of the place I was in, but also because processing everything was a monumental task. The first thing I noticed when I returned was that things didn't look the same on Earth. It felt like I was in a dream or a fake place. Earth is an illusion. It truly is an illusion. And I noticed that I wasn't seeing with my eyes anymore. I had the impression that I was seeing through my own eyes. My eyes simply felt like windows to something deeper within me, and I can only assume that this is what it was like when my third eye was opened. It was very unusual, and I began to see life in a new light. I was no longer interested in the same ego-driven activities. When someone disrespected me, I was no longer angry. I no longer felt the need to fight for my reputation and other such things, and that stuff no longer interested me. I still had a lot of problems. I still had a lot of the traumas from my childhood, and I would lose my temper and get agitated from time to time, but I wasn't pursuing the same things, and I began to heal. I began to die to the world, seeing the futility of using drugs and alcohol and other things that would never scratch the itch down there. The only thing that would scratch the itch was spending time with God, connecting with that loving presence that I felt, that loving presence that I now know is everywhere here on earth. You don't feel it the same way here. It's basically watered down, but God's love is everywhere, and we can feel it if we learn how to tune in. I know you don't have to have an NDE to tune into God's love. In 2022, which was the year of my death, I went through the same process of dissolving the unnecessary layers that I'd been carrying within me and learning how to live in the only way that would truly satisfy my soul. Now that I'm out and about, I have moments of forgetfulness, but for the most part, I remember who I am and feel like I'm in a spiritual state of flow. And when I make a mistake, I immediately lose that state of flow. And that is extremely painful for me, as we are all of the things we do that take us out of the flow state. I understand that these are the things that most religions consider to be sin. I'm no longer in the flow state when I sin. And when I'm not in the flow state, I'm back inside my very damaged ego. That's why dropping has become second nature to me. The majority of the sinful activities in which I used to engage, it's very easy for me to be sober now. It's very easy for me not to get lost in lustful fantasies and ambitious desires of chasing money and power and things like that. None of that works for me anymore. And so my life has changed since that night. I still have a lot of work to do to heal from my very traumatic childhood and to release some of the burdens that are still on my shoulders. I never thought I'd be able to heal from it, but God has placed people in my life to help me on my journey, and I no longer have to stress and worry about it. God takes care of me, just as He takes care of you, just as He takes care of all of us. God is one with me. God is one with you. God is one with all of us. I consider myself very fortunate to have had this experience, and I hope that sharing it with you will help you on your journey. And never forget that God is with us. He's one with us all, and His love is everywhere. Take care if you learn how to tune in.